Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. This is Getting Started with ClubExpress. This is a series of webinars we've been doing for a little more than a year now, just to help new admins and help people who've been added to, say, the board of directors or an executive board for an organization, just helping admins get up to speed, kind of starting from zero a little bit. So let's get into what we're going to be going over today in this Getting Started webinar. We're going to go over some of the core basics for new admins and new board members. We're going to talk about how to kind of navigate around the control panel, especially focusing on for new admins, kind of that first time getting used to the control panel, and some kind of like shortcuts and cheats that we can do to kind of make getting to where you need to be in the ClubExpress platform a little bit easier. Then we're going to take a look at membership management. So we're going to focus in on the people manager, and we'll take a look at how to find people, how to use filters, how to kind of take actions on the groups of people that you find in the people manager, and how to manage individual members. We'll also talk about processing payments for those members as well. And then on the topic of members and payments, we'll also talk about running reports. So things like financial reports or membership reports. How do we pull, contact info for our members? We'll look at a couple different options there. We'll take a brief few minutes. We won't go into too much detail on editing web pages, but we'll focus in on kind of a couple core tenets of using our page builder. So we'll look at how to, say, swap out images on your homepage, how to change some text, and how to take advantage of what we call the version manager or versioning on our web pages so that you can kind of start working on your web pages with confidence. And then finally, hoping we have time, we're trying to keep it to about an hour. We'll also go over how to send out a blast email. So we've got a lot to get through today, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start off with the control panel navigation. So I'm logged in as an administrator on a demo website that I'm going to change to in just a minute, but we're going to take a look at prioritizing how to understand what sections of the control panel there are for your clubs. We'll look at the different tabs in the control panel we have. We'll also take a look at the different sections inside those tabs. And then we'll look at a couple unique tabs. So we'll look at the dashboard tab, and we'll also look at the support tab. And then we'll talk about favorites, a really useful tool for getting around the control panel. All right, so let me change my screen share, and we'll kind of talk about control panel navigation. So this is our demo website. We are on the Northwest Balloon Club. I am logged in as an administrator. So you can always tell if you're logged in as an administrator if when you look in the top of the website, usually in the upper right-hand corner, some organizations may have the login or admin options in the upper left. But for this website, it's in the upper right-hand corner. And you will see the control panel and favorites options. If you do not see control panel and favorites, once you're logged in with your name up there, that means you're either logged in as a different account or your account hasn't been made an administrator yet. You would want to reach out to another existing administrator to give you that access. But once you have either admin or coordinator access, you will see an option to click on either control panel or favorites. First, we're going to focus in on control panel. So once you're an administrator and you click on the control panel option, it will take you to this screen. So this is our control panel screen. And the very first time you go to the control panel, it'll start you off in what we call the people tab of the control panel. So you'll notice the control panel is laid out with a number of different tabs. For most organizations, it's going to be the same. You'll have dashboard, people, website, money, club, communications, and support. There's two notable things that might change what you see here. If your organization uses a term other than clubs, so say league or organization or association or chapter, the club tab might have a different name. So the tab between money and communications might have a different name there. So if I refer to it as the club tab today, just know that for your organization, it's the one that shows up in between money and communications. The other difference is if you are a village, if you're an aging in place village, there's an entire extra section of the control panel just for aging in place villages called services. We won't be looking too deep into services today, so we're using a demo website that doesn't have that function. When we're talking about the control panel, most of the tabs of the control panel are laid out the same way. Everything from people all the way over to communications and the ones in between all have the same control panel layout. And that's going to be these three boxes here. We've got our admin functions box. This is going to give us the admin only tools that we can use to kind of manipulate and control our website. Then we've got website modules. These are tools that both have an administrative side, and there's also a member or user facing side as well. So things like, sponsorship, member sponsorships or the business directory. These are things that our members can interact with. But if we go to it through the control panel, we're going to get to the admin controls of that tool as well. And then the final box when we're looking at any of our control panel tabs is going to be the setup section. It's very similar to the admin function section. These are also admin only tools, but these are more kind of our configuration for our website. And these are less used. These are the things that once you set them up, you tend to kind of leave them the same way either forever or, you'll only change them a couple times a year. Whereas the admin functions up at the top, those are the tools that we usually see getting used, daily or weekly or monthly. So going through kind of our control panel, if we talk about kind of those different sections that we've talked about here, we also see that the same kind of layout applies to every individual tab of the control panel, but what we see in the control panel when we change tabs changes. So when we switch to the people tab, we'll see our admin functions is going to show us the option to access our custom pages. Our website module will show us things like changing our homepage or adding to photo albums. And if we change over to the money tab, we'll get our admin functions are things like our transaction search, and our website module shows us modules like donations. So they are kind of categorizing all of our different functions. There are two tabs of the control panel that do not follow the same kind of admin functions website module setup layout. That's our dashboard tab on the very left hand side and the support tab on the very right hand side. The dashboard tab shows us just some at a glance reports. These are not exportable reports. This is just a dashboard giving us a glance at some of the statistics on our organization. It's important to know that every organization gets their own, or every administrator gets their own dashboard. So if you have access to the dashboard, you can change any of these reports and you can remove them and add more without worrying about affecting other administrators. You will see your own selection of reports here. If we want to kind of alter our dashboard, we can use the option in the upper right hand corners that says configure. And this will allow us to add and remove different reports. And my recommendation, if you're just starting out with ClubExpress, is turn a bunch of them on. And then as you notice that some of these reports aren't useful to you, you can just turn them off. And you can turn them on and off simply by looking at the available charts on the left-hand side. And you can either double click or use these arrows to move them around. And then you can do the vice versa for the selected charts. So if we say, we don't need to know all of our members, sorted by type, we can take that off our list. And this is all of the reports that are going to show up on our dashboard. And we simply save. And it's just going to show us an at a glance kind of general view of some of the information about our organization. On the other hand, if we go all the way to the right-hand side, we have our support tab. And in this tab, it just gives us some useful tools. So there's an online help option. So this will take you to our help database of all of our kind of support articles. There's also a link to our YouTube channel where you can go watch tutorial videos like this one or other more produced tutorial videos. There's also a link to the administrator forum where you can go talk with other ClubExpress administrators. And then finally, if you need to contact us, there's also a ticket submission form. So this is a way to get in contact with ClubExpress support. So if you're having an issue or a bug or you're stuck on something, you can always reach out to us by, submitting a ticket and just hit submit, and we will get back to you usually within a few hours to maybe a day. We'll reach back out to you with answers to whatever your questions are, or if it's a bug, we can, get it reported and stay in contact with you about getting that fixed. So let's go back to the rest of our kind of main tabs of our control panel. If we head back over to the people tab of the control panel, I want to show you one more thing with these main tabs of the control panel, and that's the configure option. So I already clicked on the configure option when I was over in the dashboard tab, and that was how we changed what reports showed up on our dashboard. When we're in any of these other tabs, the people through communication tabs, the configure option in the upper right hand corner will allow us to kind of either grant access to modules to other people, or it will allow us to turn modules on and off. So from the people tab of the control panel, if I click on configure, I will see all of the functions available to me in the people tab of the control panel. And I can come in here and I can do things like, let's say I want to turn committees on or off. This is the committees module that shows up down here under website modules. I can click on it and then I can do things like altering the status. So right now it's an active module. I could deactivate it or disable it and hide it entirely. I can change its name. So if I don't want to call it committee, if I want to call it, groups or some other, name like that, I can change the name of the function. And I can also choose who has access to it. So right now, our committees is an active module and everyone has access to see who is in what committee. But I can change that. I can say, hey, the information of who is in a committee is actually member specific. I can say I want to change that to members only. And if I do decide to set a module to members only, I can actually also limit it to specific member types. I can say, hey, our monthly sponsors don't get access to see who's in a committee, and I can turn on and off different membership types to give them access or revoke access to particular modules. I can also come over here and you'll see once I've selected a website module, there's also the option to switch to coordinators. So right now I'm configuring the module. I can also assign coordinators to a module. So I'm logged in as a full administrator right now, but there's another option for running your organization, which is called adding coordinators. And those are people who are like administrators, but instead of having access to everything in the control panel, they only have access to specific functions. And this is one way to add a coordinator. And so I can say, I want to add a particular member to be a coordinator over committees, and they'll have access to the control panel, but only to make changes to committees or whatever other modules I may add them to. So I can come in here and I can say I want to add a coordinator, and I will say Carol Brady here. I will select. Oh, I've got to choose because I'm a subgroup organization. There we go. Carol Brady. So now I have added Carol Brady as a coordinator, and the next time Carol Brady logs into the website, she will see the control panel, but the only function Carol Brady will have access to is the committees. The rest of the tabs of the control panel and the rest of the function on the control panel will not show up unless she is assigned to them. The final thing I want to point out when we're navigating the control panel is the notices option. So if we go over here to show notices, if we click the show notice option, any announcements, any important announcements from ClubExpress, so things like updates or changes or scheduled downtime or anything of that sort, we will put in this notices from ClubExpress section. If there is no notice, then it will start out as hidden. And you can either click show notices to look at previous notices, or you can click hide notices to make that box disappear. You don't need to come and manually check for it. Anytime we add a new notice, it will automatically pop up here. And then once you've read it, you can then click hide notices again to make it go away. Just like with the dashboard, the hide and show notices is per admin. So you don't need to worry about hiding notices and making it go away for other people. It's only going to go away for you. Other administrators in your organization will still be able to see those notices when they log in. All right, so one more thing before I move on from control panel navigation is going to be the favorites option. So when we're talking about kind of navigating the control panel for new administrators or new, board members, it is often very overwhelming, especially if you're a full administrator, to look at the entire control panel and try to memorize where each tool is. So trying to remember, is it in the club tab? Is it in the money tab? Is it in communications? Is it in a admin function section or website module? It can be very difficult to kind of memorize the entire control panel. So what I recommend is taking full advantage of our favorites option. So up here in the upper right-hand corner, you have your control panel, but you'll also have favorites. And favorites is a way for you to kind of add options that you can quick access. So you'll see right at the top of my favorites here is the people manager. Normally, if I wanted to get to the people manager, I would need to click on the control panel and then head over to the people tab and remember that the people manager is in the people tab and then find it under admin functions. And that just requires me to remember where in the control panel it is to find it. Whereas otherwise, I can go up here and click on favorites and just click people manager. And that will take me right to the people manager, bypassing navigating the control panel entirely. So if we come up here to favorites, we can actually control our own favorites. So just like the dashboard and just like the notices, every admin gets their own favorites, and that includes coordinators as well, but they'll only have access to add options that they are added to their favorites. If I wanted to edit my favorites list, I can edit my own favorites list by clicking on edit favorites right below there. And when we click on edit favorites, you'll see the options that you already have selected on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side is all of the admin tools that are currently available to you. So if you're a full administrator, you'll see quite a long list, but if you're a coordinator, you'll only see the options that you are a coordinator of. And I can come over here and I can either double click on options to add them. I can double click on options over on the right-hand side to remove them. And I can also kind of change the order of them as well if I wanted to kind of change the sequence that they appear in. But I can kind of move these around similar to the way the dashboard selection worked. And then once I'm happy with what's on my favorites, I can just come down here and hit save. Sometimes it won't apply immediately. Just a note, it should apply immediately, but if you're ever having an issue where you've changed your favorites and it's not showing up, try logging out and logging back in. Sometimes that's just a cache issue where your web page remembers that your favorites were one thing, and when you change it, it doesn't immediately update. Usually logging out and logging back in will fix that. All right, so that's the kind of tips for getting around the control panel. Now let's talk about something we can do with the control panel itself. I'm already on the people manager. So let's take a minute to talk about membership management. This is one of the core functions of Club Express is kind of storing your member information, accessing it, making changes, processing payments. Those are all kind of the core functionalities of Club Express. So I want to take, just a few minutes to kind of step through the process of what it looks like to add a member, process payments, edit that member's information, and get access to, their member profile and do things like resetting their passwords. So once you're in the people manager, again, I access the people manager through the people section of the control panel, or I can go to it from my favorites if it's on your favorites bar. Once you get here, you'll see a few things. In the People Manager, you'll see 4 buttons across the upper right-hand section. If you look at the Add Member button, when you click on it, it's going to start the new member process. So this is just a tool to add new members to your database. When you click on it, it'll take you through the membership application process. This is going to be very similar to the process that normal members take, so who are not administrators. It's just the sign up process, except for we are filling in the information for someone else. There's a couple other differences when you're doing this as an admin versus doing it as a member. The main one being that we as admins get to skip some required steps. So there's information like address or email address that might be required. We as administrators get to skip right past those because we're given additional privileges that normal members are not. We also have the member options tool here. This gives us things like level changes. So if we need to change a group membership, so connecting two memberships together or disconnecting a membership or making a member a primary member, that's where we can go and make those changes. We'll talk a little bit about membership levels a little bit later. Then we have some other options that I don't get to see used quite as often. I would be careful with these. This is one of those times where I'll tell you to use a little bit of caution. There's a drop expired option, and this will mass remove any number of expired members. When you click on this option, it'll ask you to give a date, and any members who became expired before this date will be dropped from the database. So it's very, very important to make sure that when you do this, you're very confident about it. Because if I just hit go right now, if someone had, expired yesterday and, they intended to renew this weekend and I drop them, suddenly their membership account isn't accessible to them anymore. So I'm always encouraging people to be very cautious and make sure that they're, double checking their database before they do anything like dropping expired members. There's also the option to assign subgroups. This will just allow you to assign members, assign a specific member to a specific subgroup. So if you are an organization with chapters or subgroups, this can let you just very quickly pick a member and assign them to a group. It's important to know that if your organization does not have subgroups, then that option just won't be there. So if you don't see that option, you're not missing out on anything. It just means your organization doesn't use subgroups. And then finally is the cleanup tool. This is a way to go and check your database for duplicates. So if you ever have someone who accidentally signs up with, say, 2 different email addresses, and you need to kind of combine those accounts, this is a cleanup tool so you can go and find people who are duplicates and then merge those accounts together. And then similarly, we have the same 2 buttons for non-members. So Club Express stores member data, but we also store non-member data. And non-members are people your organization wants to stay in contact with. Maybe they're interested in becoming a member. Maybe they're just interested in your newsletter, or for any other reason, maybe they've attended an event, but they're not a member themselves. All of that information is considered a non-member record. And we can manually add non-members to the database, or we can take some other actions similar to the member option, so cleaning up duplicates and things like that. Finally, we get to the search option. So this is all how we can, bulk manage or add individual members and non-members. What if we want to go and take actions on existing members or non-members, either individually or as a group? We can use this search function to create a filter to search for groups of people. When you first land on the People Manager for the first time, either first time ever or the first time after logging in, you will see that the search is going to always default to what we call our standard search. It's going to be searching for members. There is the option to search for non-members or search for both members and non-members. But if we search for members, that's our standard. It's also going to include the filter of member status, active or expired. There are other statuses here that we can search for, but active and expired catch most situations. This is going to exclude things like members who've been dropped from the database or members who haven't, finished signing up yet or haven't been approved yet. This is all of our active members and all of our members who may have recently expired. That is usually the catch-all that we see most people looking for. That will catch most of the members who are kind of interacting with your organization regularly. And then the other filter we get is last name, and it starts out blank. And if we just want to see, hey, really quickly show me all of my members, that I'm regularly interacting with, that's going to be your active and expired members. And if I just leave last name blank and hit search, it will run the search. I don't need to fill anything in that filter there. It'll just be a non-filter. So right now I have 60 people in my organization that are either active or expired. If I want to add other filters, I can use this little add filter button, and you'll see every time I click add filter, it adds an additional filter to this kind of search bar, and I can continue to specify that. I can also change the filters. Let's say I don't care about last name. I actually care more about what city they're in or what state they're in or what their zip code is, and I can search for members within a certain zip code. I can also remove any filters that I'm no longer using. I can say I just care about all members regardless of their status. I'm just looking for everyone who's ever interacted with our organization in a certain zip code. There's a lot of useful search functions here, so we can change this and we can create really specific, let's say I want, people who recently joined my organization in the last 90 days, and I can hit search. No one fits that criteria, so I get no search results. If I switch this to back to just member status, if I ever get lost, I can also just hit the reset button and it'll set it right back to my default search. So yeah, between using the add filter option and the remove filter option and changing what you're filtering on, there's a lot of ways to get very, very granular with who you are searching for in your database. Once you find either the group or the individual that you're looking for, there's a few things you can do with those search results. We can come down to our search results. The first thing we can do is we can either take actions on all of the people or just an individual. So if we want to take actions on all the people that we just found, let's say all 60 of these people, there's an actions button. This actions button will give us a lot of options to take against all of these members. So we can either add them all to a mailing list. We can add everyone found to a committee or an interest. We can add everyone in this search criteria to a particular subgroup. We can also do things like creating a new mailing list. So if we wanted to create a list and just say, hey, this is all of our active members as of August 2025, we could create a new mailing list that catches all of these people. Most commonly, I think the most common action I see get taken is just this option right here. So this is one of our options to pull kind of a report of contact info for people. If I hit export this list to CSV, I will get a CSV download of all the contact info for all of the people in my search results. If I, kind of get a little bit more granular and say I'm looking for people in Chicago and search that way, I only get 2 people that show up, and I can take an action on both of them, and I can say export this list, and I can keep exporting, and it's just going to give me the contact info for whoever my search results are. If I want to take actions not on everyone in the search results, but just on an individual, we can do that by clicking on any of the options that we get in the actual row for an individual. So let's use Carol King here. We can take a few actions on Carol King. The first one I like to show is the status change. So it gets looked over a lot because people see all of these icons on the right hand side and they immediately go, oh great, I can use these icons to maintain that member. But very importantly, under the membership column here, their status is actually a link that you can click on to make changes to them. So right now, Carol King is expired. And if I say, oh, I need to, manually set Carol King to active because I'm going to make her an admin or something, I can click on her status there. And I'll say, since she's currently expired, it gives me a few options. I can activate her. I can freeze her membership. So I can temporarily set her to frozen. I could drop her membership. So I could say, hey, she's no longer with the organization. She moved away. So we're going to drop her from the membership because she's not going to be coming back. Or we could even change her to a non-member and say, hey, her membership expired. She still wants to get our newsletters, but, she's not going to be a member anymore. So we'll set her to be a non-member. But importantly here, we're going to go ahead and say activate. And we're going to activate Carol. We're going to set her expiration for 2026. So we'll manually set a new expiration date, and we'll say save. And now you'll see I've just changed Carol King from expired to active. So now she is an active member once again, and I can do things like, make her an admin, or she can log in and, interact with the website as normal. Additionally, if we're taking actions on an individual, we have all of these icons on the right-hand side. We've got the pencil icon that will take us into the member profile. We've got the mailing list icon. This will show us all the different mailing lists that our organization has and which ones this person belongs to. And we can add and remove this person from any of these mailing lists. We can access this person's member bio. So this is the kind of bio page that this member will show up in if they're in a committee, or if you look in the membership directory, this is the bio that will show up there. There's also a sticky note icon that we can use to take notes on a member. This is just a simple text note field that when we click on it, it'll pop up and we can just keep a note. This note is not visible to the member unless they're an admin. So if you are an administrator, you can see these notes, but the member themselves will not see the note. And so I can take a note for Carol and say, broke code of ethics or something like that. And I can leave that note, and this is an admin only note that we're keeping. So if Carol is not an admin, she cannot see that note. And once there's a note there, you'll notice the icon changes from a blank note with a kind of red zero on it to a filled in note with a green little plus icon. That lets us know there's a note there. We can come back and look at that note at any time. There's also a charge credit option where we can manually assign a charge or a credit. A credit would be like essentially giving someone a gift card or a voucher. So if someone helps volunteer and you want to give them back, you can give them a credit that can then be applied to any transaction on the website. A charge is the opposite of that. That's saying, I want to manually apply an additional charge, and the next time the member logs in, they will see that there is a charge due on their account, and they can pay that manually. Next over is the renew button. This is an important one. You'll notice right now the renew button is black. This icon changes color. So once it's time for a member to renew, it will turn red. And that's determined by your organization's renewal settings. But essentially, once they get within a certain number of days of their expiration date, this icon will turn red. And that will let you know just visually that it is time for them to renew. It doesn't change what the button does. Whether it's black or red, we can click on this button to begin the renewal process. So I can renew Carol King, and it would bump her membership out for another term. So if it's a year membership, you'll see it bumps her from 2026 to 2027. We as admins can renew people at any time. Most cases, members cannot renew early. They have to wait until it is, until they're within that renewal window for the organization. So let's go back and let's talk about what I think is the most important icon in this list is the pencil icon. So whenever we're looking at members in our people manager, the pencil icon will take us into their member profile. This is an important page where we can go and we can access a lot of functions for this member. Very importantly, we've got our basic member info. So if someone's address changes or their email changes, their name changes, if they let us know that change, we can go in and we can click on basic member info. And this is going to be all of the basic information about that member. We can go in and we can change things like their membership number, their first and last name. We can change their address. We can change their email address. This is all just kind of basic information that is collected by ClubExpress about those people. If your organization has organization-specific data that does not show up in the basic member information, it might be stored under additional member data. So that can be information that's specific to your club. So for example, we are a balloon club, so we might ask, what are your balloon flying certifications? That's not basic info collected by ClubExpress, but there is a tool for adding manual additional fields, and that's stored in additional data. So we can look in here. We can see, in what year did you become interested in ballooning, questions like that. And we can actually create our own questions, and that information can be stored here for each member. Then we get our member directory listing. This is the same option as clicking on that bio option back in the people manager, but we can go in here and we can manage their listing in the membership directory. So we can control what information they want to share. We can upload things like a profile picture or banner image. The member can put in information about their social media links and even write a little bio about themselves. And this is information that might show up in their, if they're on the board of directors, it might show up in the committee listing. It might show up in the membership directory. It might show up in the business directory. This shows up all over ClubExpress. So filling in a member's bio can be important. And then I'm going to jump to a couple really, I'm not going to cover every single item here, but what I'll cover are what I think are the most important options for an admin to know. So over here under more member options, very importantly, there is the member type expiration join date, the second link down. This is an important one because this is one that's only available to administrators. Normally, members can only change their member type when they renew their membership or when they're joining. We as administrators can come and we can choose this member type expiration join date link, and it allows us to change their membership type manually. So if someone is, say they signed up for the wrong membership, or we're going to upgrade their membership throughout the year, or if they were a student membership and they graduated, we might want to, for any given reason, we might want to change their membership type. So I can say, Carol is currently an individual member, but I'm going to change her to a staff member because she joined the board this year. I can change that membership type. I can also do things like manually altering when she expires. So I could say, great, she's on the board and she's going to be on the board through 2028. So I'll just go ahead and bump her, to 2028. It's important to remember that manually changing the expiration date does not count as a renewal. I am just manually adjusting the time frame that this person will expire. It does not create a renewal charge. It does not count as a renewal. It's just manually kicking the expiration date down the road. And we can also alter the join date right here as well. So join date is not a required field. We could even leave that blank if we wanted to, but we can alter their membership type, their expiration, and their join date on this page. The other place I like to point out is over here under histories. So this is the transaction history and payment history. Those two are very important. If a member ever makes a payment and they need a receipt or they need an invoice or something like that, or if they have an outstanding transaction and you need to send them that information, transaction history and payment credit history both carry all of their kind of financial history with the organization. Transaction history will show them all of the charges they've incurred, whether they're paid or not. We should have some here. So yeah, so there's a charge way back from 2024. We can see there's a sign-up charge that was paid in full, and we can see all of those charges. And on the right-hand side, we'll also see a little receipt icon that we can click to get a little receipt about this transaction. We can print this transaction receipt and give it to them if they need it. We can also delete a transaction manually if you want to. Keep in mind, if you delete a renewal or sign up, it might actually set them to expired. So you want to be careful not to delete any kind of membership transactions if they don't need to be deleted. And then similarly, if we look down here under payment history, let's go to all payment history. This is the record of all payments that have been made to the club. And so this is just tracking the payment, not what the payment was made to, just when they paid, the way that they paid, and how much they paid. And if we want to see what it was applied to, the receipt for our payments will include that information. So we can see there's all of our information about that payment and what the payment was actually applied to. So membership, the initiation fee, all of that. So those are very important for our administrators to be aware of, because a lot of times we get people who are, did I renew? Did I donate? They forget if they made a payment or not. And this is a very easy way to come and find out if a particular member, made a payment or is, still needing to pay for an outstanding transaction. And the final thing in the member profile I like to show people is if you ever have a member who gets locked out of their account, say they forgot their password for one reason or another, over here under your website functions, there is a reset password button. And this will let us reset the password for someone. If we do reset a password, it will send an email to that member with a new password and it'll let them know their username as well. So very important to make sure that they have the correct email address here, because that's the only way it's going to reset their password. If for some reason someone doesn't have access to their email or they're struggling with their email for one reason or another, you do have the option to go in and take their email address out of the account and then reset the password. And then it'll give you a manual way to kind of hand that member their username and password instead. So if you just take the email out of their basic information, this will no longer have an email address here. And when you try to reset their password, because it can't send them an email, it will just do a manual new username and new temporary password. All right. So that's most of the stuff that I have for our membership management. Let's move on now to reporting. So we've already talked about reporting a little bit with the kind of actions option here to export a list of our search results here. So if we wanted to run a report that way, we can pull a CSV or, when I say CSV, I mean like Excel document. CSV is just an Excel format. So that's an Excel list of all of our members. There's a few other ways to pull reports. So I'll focus in on people and financial reports because those are usually the most common and most important reports for a lot of our organizations. When we go back to the control panel, if we want to look for reports, it's important to know every middle tab, so not the dashboard and not the supports, but all of these other main tabs, people, website, money, club communications, under admin functions, each of them has their own reports category. So when I'm in the people tab of the control panel, I have access to reports right here. And this is going to be all of our people reports. They're broken into different categories, things like, mailing labels or membership info. I really like the membership info reports. And this will give us a number of reports. It can sometimes be overwhelming. Similar to the first time using the control panel, there are hundreds of ClubExpress built-in reports. What I usually recommend is just take note of the reports and where they are that work for you. Most organizations will not use every single report ClubExpress offers. They'll usually use 4 or 5. And just figuring out which ones work best and which ones are most important for your organization. So say, membership status by expiration date, and we can pull that with some extra filters and say, I just want my active members and I want it as a PDF and we can run that report. I'm on a demo website, so the report won't run here, but we can pull reports and we can, get information about our members that way. So these are all of our people reports. And just, I usually recommend come and run 3 or 4 reports in a row and, figure out which one looks best for your organization and just stick to that report. Again, most organizations only need, 5 to 10 reports at a time. Oh, I just saw a question pop in, and it's one that I get all the time, which is, can you favorite reports or bookmark them? Not yet, but it is something that's been on our list for quite a while. So that's something I'm hoping gets added in the near future. So right now, there's not a way to favorite reports, but possibly soon. So that's where we get our, membership reports. It's primarily just a way to pull member lists. So we can, come in here and most of these are just going to pull all of our members based on different data. I do like to point out a couple of reports that I really like. So this membership status by expiration date, that's one that I really like because it's an easy way to see, which members should be renewing soon. And then I also really like this open renewal. So this is going to show us all of our members that still need to renew. So people who are, either close to expired or already expired who need to renew their membership. This is just a really quick report to say, hey, these are the people who need to get in there and get their membership renewed. Another section of the control panel that has important reports is going to be the money tab of the control panel. And once again, under here in admin functions, we just have this reports button, but instead of our people reports, these are going to be our money reports. And we can come in here. And once again, this is just another scenario where every organization has different favorites. I'll point out some of mine. I really like the user payments reports. So this bottom category here, user payments credits, and just either the simple user payments or user payments with transactions. Those have a lot of information. I usually find that treasurers focus in on these reports because they're less concerned with what the transaction was for and more concerned with balancing it against their bank account. And so these user payments will let you kind of take a look at all of the money coming in and then comparing that to the money in your bank account. There's a couple other ways to get financial reports and financial information. So reports is a really important one, but there's also 2 other places I like to point out. Bank account activity. This is going to show all of your bank account activity between your organization and ClubExpress. Very importantly here, if your organization uses the premium processor, so if you're processing credit cards with ClubExpress and you use the premium account, you will notice that we have a bank account transaction type called remit collected funds. So if you're using the premium payment account, Club Express will receive those payments for your organization, and then we will be the ones that remit it into your bank account. And so there will be reports here on remit collected funds. Now, this is a demo website, so I don't have any remit collected funds, but any transactions where Club Express says, hey, you processed 100 transactions, here's a bulk import, here's a bulk deposit into your bank account for all of those transactions, you'll find those bank account transactions here and then details about what information, what payments went into that bank deposit. If you are using the basic uh, processor, if you're using the basic credit card processor with Club Express instead of the premium, instead of Club Express being the one to remit funds to your bank account, it will be Stripe that does it. And we have a whole webinar already. I can send a link to anyone who would like. We have a whole webinar on how to get a similar report, but from the Stripe dashboard. Right now, we're focusing on the Club Express side, but instead of Club Express being the one to remit to you, it would be Stripe remitting those funds into your bank account so that you would find those through your Stripe dashboard instead. And then finally, one more section when we're talking about reporting, one more section I like to make people aware of. So we've talked about the reporting functions, and most of these give you the option to export a report into like a PDF or something a little bit more viewable. But if you're looking for just a large spreadsheet of as much data as possible, one of the places you might want to go is going over to the Club tab of the control panel. And then under the club tab, again, this might be the association tab or league tab or chapter tab. It's the tab in between money and communications. Over here, you'll find under admin functions, data exports. And these are bulk data exports of the information stored in your Club Express website. So if we go to data export, we'll get different categories of data exports that we have. And there's a lot of data exports here, and you can kind of read through these similar to the reports. I recommend if you're just getting started, run a few of these that sound like they might be what you need, and you can just select any of these data exports and then scroll down. If it's a data export with any sort of time frame on it, so you'll see, members with mailing labels, the date range applies to the member join date. So if I enter a date range here, this will be filtering members based on when they joined. If I leave the date range blank, it'll just give me all the data. So most times I'm just leaving the date range blank and I want all of my members and I want it, this mailing label export. If I'm an organization with a subgroup, you can come down here to select subgroup and you can choose a particular subgroup. If you're an organization without subgroups, then this won't appear at all and you can just export. But if you're an organization with chapters or subgroups, you can either select, all members. So if I do demo test club, that's the demo website we're on. That would be all members in this test club, or I could choose a specific chapter and say, I want, just the people in the Chicago chapter, and I could export. And then just like before, it's going to give me a CSV. So once again, this is a spreadsheet. This is an Excel type um, uh, document format that I can pull. You can pull it into things like Sheets as well. If you're on, the Google platform, or if you're on Apple, I can't remember what the uh, spreadsheet tool in Apple is, but CSV should be readable in many, many ways. But ultimately, most people use it in Excel, and this will just give you a bulk data dump of all the information that our system has on whatever topic you want here. So there's things like people. We can also run information on some financial exports. We can run information about our chapters. There's tons of data exports here, and I always recommend just come spend a few minutes exporting the different data and finding out which one works best for you. All right, so now let's move on to talking about editing our web pages. So this is a pretty basic function that a lot of our administrators should have at least the beginnings of an understanding of how to modify the web pages. So whenever I talk about editing the content on a web page, I usually do it in the context of like, let's change a couple pictures here, let's change some text there. So let's kind of walk through those steps. If we want to change one of our web pages, I'm going to be using the home page as an example today. I'm going to go over to my website tab of my control panel. And there's two places we can go to manage web pages. There's the home option under website modules. This will take us to edit our home page. But there's also the custom pages option. So your organization can have as many web pages as you want, and they're all stored in there. Those static web pages are called custom pages. When we click on custom pages, this will show us just a list that we can search for all of the pages in our website. And this is where we can go to edit any number of web pages. Once we select a web page, the process is the same for editing this page as it is for editing the home page. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to use the home page as an example today. But just keep in mind, anything I'm telling you about how to edit the home page, all of those editing tool tips all work the same way when we're talking about editing the home page as well, or home page to custom page. So if I come in here to website modules, if I click on the home option, this will take me into my homepage versions manager. So this is a page where we can manage all the different versions of our homepage that have ever existed. So this is a really important note. I like to tell people, pay attention to this part, because whenever you edit your web page, what it was before is also stored. So any changes you make are not necessarily permanent changes that are, stuck in stone. The reason I like to kind of like talk about this for a minute is I really encourage people to get into their homepage, get into their web pages and make changes. Worst case scenario, if you mess up your homepage or you mess up a web page, you can always roll back to a previous version. So just to kind of highlight that really quickly, if we look at our homepage right now, this is what our homepage looks like. If I go back to my version manager, if I click on edit main version, that's going to be the current active version of our website. When I click edit main version, it will take me into my web page editor, and I can use this to kind of change the content on my homepage. But really quickly, first, I'm going to mess something up. I'm going to take these top bars out of my website. Just going to open the row tools really quickly. Going to delete those rows. And I will save. I'm going to make this my active version. I will save, make active, and exit. This option will publish my changes that I've made to my homepage. So if I accidentally delete some content, and we go take a look at our homepage really quickly, we are now missing that top banner bar. And if we say, oh no, we made a mistake, I need to get back to the version we were in before. If I just go to my control panel again, go to my homepage, we will see the current active version that I edited is right here, version 42. We can see the date and time that I made that change. It is right now 11:48. That is when I made the change. And we'll see the previous versions. This is version 42. The previous version was version number 41. And if I look over on the right-hand side, there's these little icons over here. The green check mark icon right there, that is our activate for main icon. If I click on that, it'll change this version to be my active version. That is how we roll back. So if you ever make a mistake and you want to go back to an older version, we can just say, I want version 41 to be my main version. So that version is now active. And if I go look at my homepage once again, my header's back. So I'm right back to where I was. So it's really, really hard to actually make a permanent mistake on your webpage. You can always just roll back to where you were. So you can kind of trial and error until you find what you like. So now let's talk about how to actually change the content on the homepage. So once again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to click edit main version. I'll be using that version 41 as a jumping off point. When we go to edit our web page, there's a few things that you should take note of. So you'll notice we're looking at our web page, but we have these black bars around our web page. We have these rows with these little dotted lines, and then we have this gray toolbar on the right-hand side. The gray toolbar is how we make most of our changes to our website. So if we come down here, let's say we want to change, this header up here. So right now there's two versions of the header. I'll talk about why there's two versions in just a few minutes, but right now let's focus in on this second one here. So special message for members. If we wanted to change our special message for members, if I click on this option and just start typing, it won't let me change the text that's there. What I need to do is I need to click on that option, and you'll notice as soon as I click on it, my little gray toolbar on the right-hand side here will notice that I clicked on a section that I can change, and it'll pop out my cell tools. So when I say cell tools, what I'm meaning is the content on our web page is all stored in cells. We are in a row and this is a cell, and inside the cell is the content of our web page. So this is the tools to edit this cell of our web page. This is a text over background cell. And so I can come over here, and to edit a text over background cell, there's some instructions about how to edit it. But what's important is just to kind of look at the content that's there. The background is this balloon image. I can either remove the image, I can change the text position, and I can also edit the text. So that's the edit text option I want right there. So the cell tools will allow me to manipulate the content in that cell. So for text over background, I'm just going to click edit text, and we'll see, the board president election is going on now. We'll just say the election is closed. And we will take away this vote button. I'm just going to highlight it and hit backspace. Our elections are closed. I'm updating this, and I will hit save. And then now that I've updated that text, I need to apply my changes. So that's a very short version of just click on what you want to change. The gray toolbar on the right-hand side should notice what type of section you're clicking on. And once you see the cell tools box open up, you can use the tools in that box to make changes. Now, there are different types of cells that might require different types of editing. So right now I'm editing text over background, but there are other types of cells that we can edit as well. So I'm going to show kind of the three most basic types of cells that we might edit. So instead of editing an existing cell, I'm going to start an entire row from scratch. So if we look at our tool on the right-hand side over here, we've got page tools. I usually ignore this one. This is just how we name the version that we're editing, but if we don't need to edit that, we can just leave that alone. Importantly, we've got our row templates, and this is where we can plug in another row for content on our website. And let's go ahead and just do a 33, 33, 33 row. So this is one row that has 3 cells. The numbers you get here are their percentages width. So this is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That's how wide each of the cells in this row are. And you'll see when I click on different cells, I get this kind of blue aura around that cell as I click around in different cells. You'll also notice when I click on an empty cell that currently says it has no content, I get the option to drag and drop a widget. So when I'm talking about the content of a cell, the type of content is determined by what we call widgets. So the most common types of cells are going to be text, and I can just grab a widget and drag it over. So right now this cell has no content in it, and when I drop the text, now it's plain text. If I come over here and say I want an image widget, I can drop an image widget onto this middle cell. And similarly, I can drop another text widget. So now I've got plain text, image, plain text. And you'll notice when I click on a cell, once it highlights that cell, I get my cell tools. I will now see, instead of the text over background edit, I get the text edit. And so this is just a text cell. I can edit it as plain text, or I can edit it as formatted text. For our text cells, if I edit as plain text, there's no styling, there's no fonts. Plain text is just boring text. I usually skip right past plain text because I want font controls. So if I'm instead wanting to do something formatted, I can just upgrade to the formatted text editor here. We can edit that same text that's there, but now we have the option to do things like making it bold, and we can change our font size, and we can change our alignment. There's a lot of tools we can play around with here. We can even do things like plugging in links. So this little chain link option will let us build a link. When you're building a link, you're just determining where the link goes. I want this link to go to our committees page. And then the link properties is what the link looks like, and I just want it to say a button that says committees. So now I am saying this link is going to my committees module. This link looks like a button that says committees, and I will just save that. So now I've got a committees button. So that's the text. This is the formatted text editor. This is, personally, in my opinion, my favorite tool for editing a web page. It's simple enough to grasp, but powerful enough that it has pretty much all the tools you really need. There is an additional option. So now we've saved our settings, and now our content there has our boring text with the committees below it. There is an additional option when we're editing a text cell, which is the advanced editor. You are absolutely welcome to play around with that. I usually shy away from the advanced editor for beginning administrators. There's just a lot of extra bells and whistles there that can get a little bit overwhelming. So there's tons of options. There's, kind of dividers within dividers. It can get a little bit complex. It also gives you the option, if you know HTML code, to come in here and kind of edit the content as HTML. But I usually try to stick to the formatted editor just because it's a little bit simpler to use, and I'm usually a little bit faster at editing information in the formatted text editor. Then we get our next cell over, which is an image cell. If we click on the image option, our cell tools here, we'll see we get slightly different options than we've seen before. We get the option to insert or change an image. Once we click on that, we'll get this little pop-up that lets us see all of the images currently on our website. We can also upload a new image from our computer. So if we have an image that's not already on our website and we need to upload it, say we've got a new club logo or something, we can select upload new graphic, and it'll let us browse our computer for a new image file. And then it'll appear in here once we upload it. But if we're going to, let's say we use this image right here, I can just select an image and hit save, and it'll drop that image into that cell. And then once again, we've got plain text on the other side, and we can do things like adding more text, adding more links. I did see someone ask, do these collapse on top of each other in a mobile format? Yes. So if you are designing a web page, always keep in mind that if you look at this web page on a mobile phone, instead of showing text, image in the middle, text on the right, on a mobile phone, this will auto stack. So it'll automatically adjust. It'll show boring text on top, image below it, and then this other cell below that. So it'll kind of from left to right stack top to bottom. Because a mobile phone doesn't have quite the space that a desktop computer does. If you want to see a preview of what that looks like, you can always scroll up to the top and select this preview button in the upper right-hand corner. And this will let you preview what your page looks like. I usually recommend making sure to switch from the admin view to the member view. And we can see there's a preview of what our boring text and our committee button and our image that we dropped in there. And then we also have the option to change the preview of the type of device that we're working on. So right now we're looking at a desktop view, but if I want to see what it looks like on mobile, it'll give me a little preview of a mobile phone. And we can see here, there's my boring text stacked on top of my image. And if we go back to a desktop, now it's left, center, right. The preview just opens in a new tab, so we can just close that tab and get back to our editor. So I mentioned at the top of editing this that we saw that there's two banners here, but if we look at our homepage, there's only one banner that we're seeing. The reason we're seeing two different banners in our editing page is because one banner is for members and one banner is for new members, is for the public, people who aren't members yet. So this second option here, you'll see the little dotted line grid on the left-hand side, and below that you'll see there's an icon that shows a person with a little padlock. That means this whole row is locked to members. And if you hover over it, you'll even see the text pop up, says current visibility is members only. And then this row up above, if you look at the kind of left-hand side, you'll see a little hollow person. That means it's visible to the public only. So this means the entire row is invisible if we're a logged in member. And this row, the entire row is invisible if we're not a member. So this gives us the effect of having, the same banner, but with different information on it, depending on whether you are a member or whether you're the public. If you want to change that, you can just click on that icon over on the left-hand side, and it'll cycle through your different options. So there's the option to have it hidden to everyone, which is the eye with the line through it, meaning it's invisible no matter what. The hollow person is meaning public only. Members do not see this. The person with the padlock means that's locked for members. So if you are not a logged in member, you will not see this row. And then finally, there's the two people, the hollow person and the solid person. That means this row is visible to everyone, whether you're a member or not. So I will set this back to what it was before. And we will save. When we're saving a web page, we have a few options. So you'll see the same options at the top as you will at the bottom. So down here at the bottom, we have save new version and continue, save new version, exit, save, make active and exit. And that one's highlighted in blue. And then we have cancel. And if we go all the way back up to the top, we get those same options: save new version and continue, save new version, exit, save, make active and exit. And then the cancel option is all the way over there on the right hand side. In this case, if we wanted to save this version and maybe have another administrator review it before we publish it, we could say, let's say, save new version and exit. So I've saved my homepage, but I haven't applied those changes. If I look at my homepage right now, that committee button and that image that I put in are not there right now. If I go back, I can see there's my version 43 that I just saved. Version 43 is only a version. It is not the active version. I can then tell another administrator to go in and say, hey, click on the eyeball to preview it. And they can take a look at the preview. They can look at it as the public. They can look at it as a member. They can look at it on a cell phone or on a sideways cell phone or on a tablet. They can preview it how it will look on different devices. And then once they're happy, they can say, yeah, I'm happy with that. And then we can come back to our homepage version manager. And if we're happy with it, we can say, great, the one that I made at noon on the 27th, we'll go ahead and activate that. And once it's active, we can then go look at our homepage one more time and we'll see there's our text, there's our committee link, there's our image that we put in the middle. All right. I don't think I have the full time. I want to make sure that we answer some questions. So I'm going to push the email sending portion to our next Getting Started webinar. But Evan, are there any questions I can answer with the few minutes we have left in our webinar?
One common one I do see is some people want to know how to edit the menu.
Yeah.
In terms of like adding items to it.
Absolutely. Super important. Yeah. So let's go over that really quickly. So if we're looking at our website, so obviously we were editing the content of our homepage, which starts for us right below our menu. The menu itself is not a part of the homepage. If we want to edit our menu, the place we do that is we go to Control Panel. And we go still in the website tab of the Control Panel down here under Setup, you will find Menus. Oops, I clicked on that a little quickly. Let's do that one more time. Setup, menus right over here. So on the right-hand side. When we click on menus, we'll see we have a few options. Now, most organizations will only have one or two menus. There's a reason that we have additional menus, but most cases, people will have a member menu and a public menu. And just like those rows that we were looking at in the page editor, the member menu is what is visible to a member, and the public menu is what is visible to non-members. Now, there is an option to create even more menus, and those menus can be made visible to specific membership types. I won't go over that today. We'll probably go over that again in the future. But today, let's focus in on how to add and remove things from our menu. So if we pick a menu, let's say, hey, I want my members to be able to access something. We can look at our member menu here. If we click on the pencil for it, we will see, just like we saw with our favorites, just like we saw with the dashboard, we see a left-hand side with all of the possible options of everything that can go on the menu. And on the right-hand side, you see all the things that currently are on the menu. So you'll see home, my chapter, about us, all the way down to contact us. That's the same thing from left to right. Home, my chapter, about us, member resources, all that stuff. So it's the same options that we see up there. If we want to take something off or put something on from the menu, we use those same kind of tools. We can come over here and we can say, we no longer need to have the what we're doing. We're going to change that page. We'll put it back up later. So I can say I'm going to take what we're doing off. And I can say I want to put About Us on. So I'll double click on About Us, and then I can just use the arrows to move that around. And let's say we'll put About Us right after Home. So I can edit that menu and then hit Save. And it should pretty much immediately, yep, there we go, Home, About Us, and the what we're doing is now gone. And so that's how we quickly change what is on a menu. It is also important to note that there is a sub menu option. So for example, this My Chapter has this little arrow next to it. When I click on About Us, it takes us to the About Us page. When I click on My Chapter, it just gives me this drop down and it shows us all these different options. So Chapter Finder, H-Town, board election. So this is all my chapter info. If I want to change what shows up on this dropdown, I don't do that from my member menu here. If I click on member menu, it just says My Chapter parentheses submenu. What I do to change the content on this dropdown is I go down here to submenus, And I can either find an existing submenu or I can create a new one. But let's do my chapter. So there's that my chapter submenu. And I can click on the pencil here. And just like for a regular menu, I can change what shows up on that drop down. And I can say I don't need H Town, I don't need the fly-in photo, I just need, these options. So I can reduce what shows up on that submenu and hit save. And I don't need to go in and re-edit the member menu. It should just update. And so now our chapter menu has these, fewer options. And you can create additional submenus. Do note that once you create a submenu, you do then have to go and actually add it to your menu. And there's an option when you're editing a menu that says filter by, and we could say, just show me my submenus. And this is all of our submenus that we can add and remove from our menu itself. There is an additional option for something called mega menus, where you can put multiple submenus inside of a submenu. So it's a drop down with drop downs. So that's something, I would just encourage you when you're creating a submenu, you would just say display as a mega menu. And instead of choosing individual items, you would choose submenus. And so you can add multiple submenus to a submenu. Kind of gets a little bit meta there. But it's a way to cram a lot of information into your website menu without overloading it from left to right. Because one thing I always hate is when a menu, does something like this. If I add a bunch of stuff to my menu, and suddenly it starts wrapping around like that, that's too much to take in. That's something that you don't necessarily want to, have an overloaded menu like this. Instead, I'll just use a lot of sub menus or mega menus like this. So this member resources, that's a mega menu. So that way I can cram a lot of information on it, but it's not, blowing up my web page with a bunch of information. So I can have a pretty short menu, but with a bunch of options on it. Yeah. Um, all right. Anything else we can cover, Evan? Let's see. I know I saw a lot of questions about height, both with like the banner and web pages, and like how to make a row taller or shorter. It's important to keep in mind width is usually automatic. So like when we were messing with those web pages, let's go back to our home page. The width of these sections is based on percentages. If I shrink my screen, it will automatically adjust the kind of width of these sections to fit a third. The height, however, is automatically based on the content of the cell. So right now I've got this image in there, and this image is, it's right now 33% the width of my screen. And in order to display the image correctly, it will automatically adjust the height downwards. If I shrink this image, you'll see as I shrink the image, the height of this row shrinks as well. So the height of my content is actually determined by the content in the cell. There is no, I want this cell to be 500 pixels tall or 300 pixels tall, because we're trying to make sure that our websites are responsive to things like, mobile phones and tablets and extra wide monitors. And so trying to make it, setting a height that is a consistent number of pixels tall is not a good way to go about that. The best way to go about it is to have automatic height. And if you want something a little bit shorter, use a slightly shorter image, or use, less text or something like that. The entire row will adjust its height based on the tallest thing in that row. And that goes for your footer and your header as well. I won't get too much into the rest of the content of the header today, because we'll save that for another webinar, especially once I'm sure some of you saw our user interface updates that are coming. Once those updates come, I'm sure we'll go through kind of how to edit your header and footer and web pages as well, once again, because some of those tools are going to change the way they look in the next couple months. So the functionality will be the same. It's just a little bit of a different look as you go through it. So we'll be redoing a lot of our past webinars. All right. Let's see. Evan, any other common questions you've been seeing?
Just one that you did go over adding members and non-members, but just to note that both do come at a cost, and non-members are 5 times your active member count.
Right. So yes. So one thing that's always important to keep in mind with Club Express is if your organization, our base fee I think is 35. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, but I think it's $35 a month. Um, but our fees, if you ever see your fees go over $35 a month, our fees are based on the number of members you have. And if you're ever curious about it, you can see that over in the pricing page on clubexpress.com. You'll see this little calculator. And so if I have, 500 members, 500 active members equals 170, dollars a month. It'll just tell you right there. But it's also important to keep in mind that if you're importing a lot of non-members, there is a fee of 2 cents per non-member over 5 times the number of active members you have. So that's a complex way of saying if I've got, 1,000 members, I can have 5,000 non members for free. And then after 5,000 non members, every non member over 5,000 would be 2 cents per. So if I had 5,001 non members, I would pay 2 cents a month. If I had 5,010, I'd pay 20 cents a month. So yeah. And then if you want to add members and non-members, we took a look at this before, but I'll just reiterate. When we go to our control panel and go to people, if we want to add a new member, we would just click this add member button and we can, add them to our membership database. If payment is required, then you could wait for them to log in and pay, or you could submit payment for them. And then if you need to add like a contact, so someone who's considering being a member or someone who just wants to receive mailing, like receive the newsletter, you can do that by adding a non-member. And this has information like, how did you hear about us, their basic info, uh, things like that. So you would just kind of go through either adding a member or a non-member there, but just do keep in mind that, that is how we determine your monthly price. Although I think if you're below like 70 or 80 active members, I think it's just that minimum $35. Someone asks, what's the difference between a member and a non-member? The main difference there is just whether they can log in or not. So non-members cannot log into the website, so they can't do things like, setting up a full member profile or submitting additional member data, things like that. So if you want that person to be able to log in and interact with the website fully, they would need to be a member, not a non-member. And then someone asks, how do you change a member to a non-member? So there's not a way to go straight from member to non-member. What you would have to do is either, so let's take Carol King here. We've been messing with Carol King all day. Let's make her a non-member. So let's go over here. We'll go to her status. We can do things like freeze, drop, or expire. We cannot just go straight from active member to non-member. Normally they would have to expire or be dropped first. But if I just manually set Carol to expired, I can then take an expired member and I can say, I want this expired member to be a non member, and I will convert. And now Carol drops off the list because she's a non member. But now if I search, we should see Carol. There's Carol King, and now she is a non member. That does mean that Carol can no longer log in. So we did set Carol up as, an admin earlier. She would not be able to log in as an admin. So you want to keep that in mind. The people who need to log into your website, you want to make sure that you keep them as members. But you can also do that thing in reverse. So we can come to a non-member and say, hey, I want Carol King to be a member. And I can go over and click on this icon on the very far right-hand side over here for a non-member. And I can say, convert to member. It'll ask me to pick a membership type. I'll say staff. It'll ask me if I want to charge a fee. It'll also ask me to set an expiration date. And I'll just say, okay. And now Carol King is not on this list. And if I go back to searching for members, there's Carol again. All right. I've gone over my normal listed time, so I'll go ahead and start wrapping up. Evan, are there any other pressing questions or you think we're good?
I don't think there's any major questions like that.
Great.
Just a reminder that everything will be posted on YouTube eventually, right?
Yes. So if there's anything that we went through and you want to review it, we'll have this webinar up on YouTube in a couple days. And then if you have any questions that we didn't answer, as always, reach out to our support team. And if there's any questions that I need to answer, they'll get them to me. And then we'll also be doing more of these getting started webinars covering, similar topics, but we'll kind of branch out slightly differently in every getting started webinar. So they each have slightly different content. And we'll go through that in the future. But otherwise, thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you guys in our next Getting Started webinar. Also, those of you who are new to Club Express or been in club with Club Express for a long time, the next few months are going to be really exciting. So we'll have a lot of webinars on the user interface changes that are coming. We already did kind of a preview webinar, and I'll let you know right off the bat there were a lot of comments in that preview webinar, and we took just about every really good recommendation that we got, and we made a ton of changes based on the comments we got in those webinars. So if you want to see like the changes that are coming, keep an eye out for those user interface webinars in the next couple months, as we start to roll out those changes, and you'll see a lot of the changes that you guys actually asked for were applied. So that was really exciting for me. I always love when direct customer feedback can impact the way we develop Club Express. All right. I will be seeing you guys later. Have a good day.